Hey, reviewers, ready? Ready? Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Erica Anderson. Today I will be talking about the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. I know I've been hitting you guys kind of hard with military stuff, so today we're just going to further your education a little bit more. Before we start, does anybody want to volunteer and answer what they think that the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy entails? Tom?
If you're not homosexual, tell people because they can't kick you out for that.
Right, you're partially correct. So there's a little bit more to it than people think. So we're going to go over what exactly it is, the origin of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and why it's in place. And we're going to discover, kind of the negative repercussions that it really can have in the military and mission readiness and national security, because it really does have that kind of ripple effect. So, like John said, if you are openly gay or bisexual, you are barred from serving in the military. But also, the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy states that the military can't seek out your orientation. So in other words, they can't ask you if you're gay or straight or bisexual. Just don't ask, don't tell. It's not something that's meant to victimize people of different orientations. It's a way of keeping orientation out and professionalism in. Because as you guys know, it's held to a very high standard. Professionalism is one of those key things that the military is known for. And there is no direct correlation between your orientation, willingness to serve your country, but in any job. It doesn't have to be the military or a government job. In any job, professional life and private life should not be mixed, because it messes with the hierarchy of your job. Favoritism. There's a lot of negative factors that would come in if relationship statuses did get involved. All right. It started in the early 1900s. Discharges, you guys are all familiar with that. You get asked to leave the military for whatever reason. So when there was cases of homosexuality, it was called a blue discharge. And it was kind of neutral. The early 1900s, you guys know, it was still a time of great racism in the country. So blue discharges could be given for instances of homosexuality, but also in racial cases as well. It later was changed to an undesirable discharge, and that was a bad conduct mark. So it went from being neutral to a negative thing. In 1992-1993, Bill Clinton began the war to stop the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy and repeal it, but it's been nearly 20 years of this battle. So it's been really ineffective because, in my opinion, it's so unrealistic in today's time. I mean, it's been a 20-year battle. All right, and now there are a lot of factors as to why it would be unrealistic to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Money. It's sad that it has to come down to that, but in a lot of cases, that is the main reason why Don't Ask, Don't Tell won't be repealed. Safety. To a lot of people, they don't know that this is put into place for the safety of people who want their confidentiality protected. Professionalism, as I talked about before, you don't want to mix that private and professional life. And space. That's also a big factor. This is actually a man on a U.S. submarine, and you can see how tight and cramped it is. And that's actually one of the battles with putting women on submarines these days, is there's just absolutely no space for separate sleeping and bathroom areas for men and women. So that's also a big part of it. All right, to go farther into money and space, there's not enough funding. It costs millions of dollars to refurbish just one submarine for women to go on board. And if Don't Ask, Don't Tell is repealed, then people of different orientations will be put in different berthing and head areas. So you can only imagine the astronomical costs that would fall into play, which would plunge this military greatly in debt. It's just there's are not enough resources, and it's sad that logistically speaking, this is such a bar that this is lifted, but it's reality. And there's just no space to put anyone, like that man you saw on the submarine. Money is a tight resource, and space is a tight resource. And also, if you separate homosexuals and bisexuals from heterosexuals, that reminded me a lot of the Plessy versus Ferguson case with the separate but equal. People are saying, a counter-argument to this is, oh, if you lift Don't Ask, Don't Tell, everyone's equal, everyone can serve. But is it really equality when everybody is separate? I didn't think so. All right, and rules of the relationship road. This is mixing your professional and personal life. As I said earlier, the two shouldn't be mixed. It messes with the mission readiness, which is basically, how you carry out the mission and how effective you are at your job. And if things like sexuality were so open for discussion, I think that would really take away from how you handle your professional life. In some cases, on ships and air wings, there have been relationships discovered, and the two have been relocated because there's such a policy against dating within the military. There's already strict rules. There's the one up, one down rule, which dictates that you can't date someone, you can date someone one rank above you or one rank below you. Officers and enlisted can never have an open relationship, you know, heterosexual, homosexual, it doesn't matter. That's just the rule that's always been in place. And Don't Ask, Don't Tell actually started off as a regulation, but it was written into law because there were so many problems with it. And there are major influences as to why this should stay in place. This is General James T. Conway. He's the Commandant of the Marine Corps, and he says, he quoted several times in the Service Members Legal Defense Network and in the Center for Military Readiness, he claimed that homosexuality, heterosexuality, it should just remain private. He's very against this being repealed because he thinks that it would mess with mission readiness, as I said before, and he's a man of great influence. So a lot of people are going to listen to what he has to say. And everyone can serve. That's a common misconception with Don't Ask, Don't Tell. A lot of people think that it is strictly meant to bar out homosexuals, but everybody can serve. You just keep your orientation silent. I mean, it's a professionalism thing. It's not just to target a certain group of people. What a lot of people don't know about Don't Ask, Don't Tell is that it's very protective.
You're at 6 minutes.
Okay. If people are separated, homosexuals are separated, then that makes them so much easier to victimize. And instead of blending in, like as the goal would be if this was repealed, then these people would just be ostracized even further because, you know, separate bunking area, people know who's homosexual, people know who's bisexual. They don't mix in. They're very cast apart from the rest of the unit, and that's not good for unit cohesion. They become easy targets with their open relationship status, and a really big part of this is a lot of enlisted rates, statistically speaking, a lot of people enlist from the South, and in the South there is a lower education rate, and with lower education comes less tolerance, and so much of the military is made of less tolerant people, just geographically where they come from, so it's not widely accepted with them, and it's part of the military. Individuality is not a luxury that is offered. So your goal is to blend in and do your job, not to stick out or be victimized. All right, and this is the case of Alan Schindler. He was a man who served in the late 80s and early 90s. His first tour was on the Midway, which was an extremely tolerant ship, and he was open with his sexuality. And this was a problem because, you know, he did his job, he was a good sailor, but he was open with his sexuality, and the crew was very permitting of that. So they kind of went against the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. And he was brutally murdered once he relocated ships to the Bella Wood. He was brutally murdered by 2 of his own shipmates because his reputation preceded him. They knew he was gay, and they were very against that. So because he was open with his sexuality and he was given that leeway to be so open, it ended up costing him his life. And, you know, had Don't Ask, Don't Tell been strictly followed like it should have been, maybe this man still would have been alive. And his mother was quoted in an article in the Washington Times saying she believes that if Don't Ask, Don't Tell was kept like it should have been, he would have still been around. Okay. All right, and in conclusion, logistically speaking, because of money and space reasons, ethically, because of professionalism, and, you know, specific cases like Alan Schindler, it's just too unrealistic for Don't Ask, Don't Tell to be repealed at this time. All right, and do you guys have any questions, any comments that you want to say? Thank you.
Make sure that you give me your bibliography and outline it at some point today.
All right.
Hold on, hold.